All right, you guys, happy Monday. And I don't know that I am ever going to be able to forgive Trump for making me do what I'm about to do, the unthinkable. I am going to have to defend Barack Obama. I can't believe this. That's how bad the fallout is right now over Jeffrey Epstein. It just continues. And Trump seems to be hitting rock bottom in terms of communicating on this particular topic. And I'm looking back and I want Covfefe Trump back, Covfefe Trump back. That guy seems to be gone. Also, you guys, I'm kind of worried about Tucker Carlson's life, and I'll tell you why. Welcome back to Candace. Where do we begin? Okay, I think we should at first start with the montage that was actually put together by Breakthrough News. It's good to do this just to remind ourselves that we're not going crazy on the topic of Epstein. Take a listen.
How is it that my father can be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? I'm trying to figure out how that's possible, right, folks? It's almost like they're trying to protect those pedophiles for some reason. I can't imagine why, right?
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
In this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
I'm not ever going to let this story go because of what I heard from a source about Bill Clinton on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not letting it go, ever. Ever.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
All of these people are in power now. All of these people could certainly release the quote unquote list. Is it exactly a list? Is it a network of contacts? Is it video footage of people that committed crimes against children? We don't know. And we may never know, which is leading some people to ask the question, like, is Trump actually in the Epstein files? And personally, my take on that is no. But what is your opinion? Because I can't reconcile this Donald Trump with the Trump that we're seeing right now, the Trump that is gaslighting the public right now, the Trump that I voted for across multiple elections. The Epstein scandal is definitely terminal cancer to Trump's MAGA movement. There's no question about that. I actually said to my husband this week, and we were talking about it, that in order for Trump to get out of this is how bad it is, in order for him to actually make the MAGA base forget this, like potentially move on from Jeffrey Epstein, he would essentially have to come right out and repeal income tax in the United States. And then we would be extremely happy. Everyone would be very happy. And then we'd go, actually, thanks, Trump, but we still remember the Epstein scandal and we want the list. That's how bad it is. There's just no making anybody forget about this Epstein scandal. It's a major fumble. And I want to be very clear, Trump's team knows that. Everything they are doing right now indicates that they are in panic, a full-blown panic. And what I mean when I say Trump's team, I kind of mean the Zionists that are around Trump and have been kind of running everything behind the scenes. Now let's back up here, because in case you missed it over the weekend, the first thing that transpired was that there was a confirmation that the footage, remember, it's supposed to be the raw footage from Jeffrey Epstein's cell. This is so transparent. You can watch this footage yourself. We're dropping 10 hours of raw footage for you to climb through. Turns out, actually, the footage was edited. Here's the story that broke and trended over this weekend. The headline is coming from Wired, and it tells us that the metadata shows that the FBI's quote-unquote raw Jeffrey Epstein prison video was likely modified. Now, we've gone over what metadata is for those of you that are not up on your computer literacy, but we looked at this, the Justin Baldoni case. You can kind of go in and see when certain files were uploaded, learn about the path of those files. And they took a look at the metadata that was embedded into the video. At Wired took a look at this. They analyzed it, and their forensic experts concluded that rather than this being some direct export, which it would have to be raw footage from the prison surveillance system, the footage was modified. Essentially, it looked to them that they had uploaded footage into Adobe Premiere Pro and that the files then were assembled from at least 2 source clips. Then it was saved multiple times, and then it was exported, and then it was uploaded to the DOJ's website, where it was presented as if it was not touched at all. Now, the experts say that it's not exactly clear what was changed, why it was changed. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily definitively deceptive manipulation, but it definitely leads to some questions asked, which one of the biggest questions is, why do they lie? Why are they lying? Why refer to it as raw footage? If you know that it was uploaded into a software, maybe they just put 2 clips together, but why did you put those 2 clips together? Again, they're saying, Wired, that the absence of the clear explanation for what they use to process the file is complicating the DOJ narrative. And there are a lot of red flags that keep adding up here, right? If you're paying attention, foremost, the prison footage that they released, if they actually wanted to be transparent, again, pardon me and my common sense here, but if they wanted to be transparent, shouldn't we have seen in that footage some prison guards or correctional officers sprinting to his cell? Once they got the call and they realized that somebody had committed suicide, it would have been, I think it would have been prudent for them to release footage of a bunch of people chaotically running towards the cell. Because you might say, oh, well, they didn't want to show footage of him being pulled out of the cell because, you know, that footage it's really hard to take a look at. It's a dead person. That's way too much. Let me remind you that they already showed us dead Jeffrey Epstein. 60 Minutes did a whole special on it, and they showed who they're alleging is Jeffrey Epstein to, you know, put the public conspiracy theories to bed. This is him, bloodied, bruised. This shows, you know, the noose that was around his neck. 60 Minutes already did that. So why didn't the DOJ show us just a little bit more action? Instead, what they presented to the public was footage that begins at 7:04 p.m. Eastern, the night before he commits suicide on August 9th, and it lasts until 6:40 a.m. on the 10th. Why? Why did they choose that 10-hour window? We've still not gotten any clear explanation as to why there was a minute of footage missing, by the way. Remember, Pam Bondi told us something ridiculous. It made no sense. It was honestly, well, you know, sometimes every night they take away a minute, and they've been doing that for a long time. And I'm looking for clarity as to why that is, but we'll circle back. It was a Jen Psaki kind of response. Okay, so this leads to the bigger question here, which is, did Jeffrey Epstein actually kill himself? Or did he make an escape? Or did somebody enter his cell and murder him? Those are really the only 3 available options that the public has. And given a lot of the fumbling that's happening here with Epstein Ball, I think we have the right to, again, examine those questions and try to get some answers. Okay? We should back this up so that you can truly comprehend how completely asinine everything they are telling us is. And you probably need to be refreshed on what actually took place on that day that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Also, even the few weeks before that, when he actually was taken into custody. Okay, so let's go back to 2019. Okay, a few weeks before his mysterious death, on July 6th, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein is arrested on federal charges related to sex trafficking. Okay. He was taken into custody. His plane lands in Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, and he's returning from Paris, no less. Don't even get me started. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We will bring you that Epstein Parisian series with Xavier Poussard. But he's coming back, and he lands, and they arrest him in Teterboro Airport. And after he's arrested, they immediately assign him to the special housing unit. And the reason that they give the public is because, look, this is a high-profile arrest. This is Jeffrey Epstein. We want to make sure that he's kept safe. So he's going into a special housing unit. And by the way, knowing what we know about his previous arrests and the special housing circumstances of that sheriff's office in Miami, I'm thinking now maybe he's expecting to be put somewhere separate from the rest of the prisoners. Something that I've always noticed about Jeffrey Epstein that's very off-putting and kind of puts a chill down my spine is how confident he always was. That smirk that was always on his face. We saw that smirk when he was a teacher. We see that smirk. It's like Jeffrey Epstein knew in this way that he was never, ever actually going to be held accountable. No matter what photos you see of Jeffrey Epstein, he looks kind of happy. He's not exactly fearful of the legislative system. He's not fearful that he's going to get in trouble. So when you fast forward to the morning where he allegedly kills himself, that is on August 10th, again, just a few weeks after his arrest, given everything we know about how powerful Jeffrey Epstein was, how powerful his connections are, he knows everybody, right? Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, is from New York, pulled up, right? Everybody from finance executives to politicians know Jeffrey Epstein. The conclusion here is already quite strange. It's quite strange that we know a few weeks after his arrest he's going to commit suicide, because if you're Jeffrey Epstein and you know everybody, so much so that back in 2007, you virtually got off with sex trafficking, right? And this time in 2009, what he's being charged with is less. He's being charged, again, sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of those minors between 2002 and 2025. But to him, you just beat charges with a bogus pretend plea deal where you were able to move into a sheriff's office that was specially designed for you. They were hanging up TVs for you. You were allowed work release for 12 hours a day. You were so powerful, you made the officers dress up in suits as they took you off campus to your office, right? And greeted the people that were meeting you. And then you made them disappear the list of the people that were meeting you. This is not prison. This is pretend, okay? We know that. So if you're Jeffrey Epstein and that's what happened when you went to prison the last time, really went to jail, wouldn't you maybe take your chances that you're going to get off this time too? Wouldn't at least your perception, even if you didn't get off, you'd be like, well, you know, prison for sex trafficking is really just not that bad. It's great. I was running the show. This does not make any sense that he is the king of New York. He's the king of Florida. He's got everybody on speed dial. And yet we know he's going to commit suicide a couple of weeks after his arrest. And we're supposed to believe also that nobody gave him a heads up, that there was a warrant for his arrest in New York. I don't believe so. Anyways, we are told the official storyline is that a couple of weeks later, he just was in his cell and said, I can't do a few more weeks. I couldn't possibly do this. I've come so far in life. I know everybody. I'm unbelievably wealthy. I'm internationally renowned, protected by the state of Israel, but I can't do a couple of weeks in prison. And this is the timeline of what we are told happened on August 10th, okay? At 6:33 a.m., and I made this for you, so excuse if there's any typos, I just did this morning, but at 6:33 a.m. on August 10th, an alarm was activated in that special housing unit because Jeffrey Epstein was discovered hanging from a noose that was fashioned out of bed sheets. Around this time, we're told that a call was placed to first responders, and the correctional center the officers attempted to revive him. That's per the FDNY. Then we learned that at 7:10 a.m., the ambulance takes him to the closest hospital, okay? At 7:24 a.m., a photojournalist named William Farrington for the New York Post, he works for the New York Post, creates a file, the metadata became available, for the first two photos of Jeffrey Epstein being transported into the hospital where he's going to be pronounced dead just 12 minutes later. So I just want you to understand the amount of luck that this guy had from the New York Post. Now, me and the team are debating this. I'm like, I lived in New York. You're not just a photojournalist that's just sitting outside to see who's going into a hospital, okay? Clearly, somebody tipped you off, but somebody would have had to tip you off that it was Jeffrey Epstein even to do that, because if somebody calls you and is like, yeah, some guy from the prison is being transported to the hospital, you'd be like, yeah, this is New York. Big deal. You know this is a big get, and you're telling me you are able to, wherever you are in New York at 7 o'clock in the morning, sprint across New York, this William Farrington guy, and you get the photo and it happens to be that you work for the New York Post, which is a whole Israeli op, don't get me started. The New York Post, the one that did like Candace Owens Anti-Semite of the Year, New York Post, the New York Post that has literal IDF soldiers that write for them. Yeah, that New York Post, their photojournalist, William Farrington, happens to be in the right place at the right time, got tipped off and made it across town, wherever maybe he lived nearby. A lot of things would have had to go right for William Farrington to capture that photo, okay? So he captures that photo, uploads that into whatever the New York Post database is. And let's get this timeline back up. So that's at 7:24 is when he does that, okay? And then at 7:36, just 12 minutes later, Jeffrey Epstein is pronounced dead by the emergency room physician. And let's take a look at those photos, by the way, that he captured. These are the two photos that he captured. So you see he's got this photo, and the photos are taken, according to the metadata, 8 minutes apart. That's one photo. 8 seconds apart. So that's one photo and then another photo. So that person who's looks like he's getting air into Jeffrey Epstein's lungs is in one photo, and 8 seconds later, or 8 seconds before, he's suddenly not in that photo anymore. Okay, whatever. We don't need to be conspiracy theorists. But the New York Post was there to capture these photos, and they are going to be the first to give us these photos, but they're not going to be the first to report that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. So that's weird. The New York Post is on the scene capturing this photo, but they are not going to be the first news organization that reports that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. So maybe that photojournalist, I don't think he's so lucky, he captured the photos. He didn't even know what he had. He uploads it to New York Post, and he's like, I don't know, I just stand out here and I take photos of people coming into the hospital, which happens every second of the day, but I'm here and this might be important. Anyways, the first news report, actually at 8:16 a.m., even stranger, a mysterious 4chan post appears. And somebody announces on 4chan that Jeffrey Epstein is dead at 8:16 a.m. We never got an answer, of course, as to who that is. We do learn this year, by the way, that Israel controls a lot of the posts that are on 4chan. But we can park that aside. We don't need to be a conspiracy theorist. Let's just go with the facts. That 4chan post hits at 8:16 a.m. And then at 8:54 a.m., the first news report comes out of ABC from a journalist named Aaron Katursky. And he's the first that tweets that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Sources tell ABC that Epstein committed suicide at MCC Manhattan. Now, a couple of things weird about this. First off, Aaron Katursky has got a lot of luck. He's one of those journalists that's always there when something happens. He also was one of the first to know that Michael Jackson was dead. Whatever, lucky guy. I'm sure he was there when, Pearl Harbor got attacked, when 9/11 towers went down. He was probably there the day JFK got shot. Who knows? All we know is he is the person that is the first to tweet that Jeffrey Epstein is dead and died of suicide. Now, what's even weirder about that guy is the fact that he works for ABC News. Why? Because ABC News infamously killed the Jeffrey Epstein story. They had it for years about the sex trafficking, about the girls, and from the top, the journalist that was lower rung, which was Amy Robach of ABC News, was told to kill the story. How do we know this? Because she got caught on a hot mic saying that ABC honchos plus the royal family came down and made her kill the story. Here is Amy Robach caught on the hot mic venting her frustration about the fact that she knew about Epstein and was told she couldn't report on it. Take a listen.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything.
So she went out, she got that story. She interviewed Virginia. As we know, she was the one that made the allegations against Prince Andrew. And she's saying for 3 years she knew this. And they came down on her, ABC News execs, with pressure from the palace and said, you're not running the story. First, they gaslit her. Nobody knows who he is. Then they said, oh, you're just not running the story. And it was over. But now ABC News, mysteriously, first to report it, not the New York Post. And the New York Post, again, William Farrington caught these photos. Now, you would think maybe he would win photojournalist of the year. I think they have a Pulitzer Prize for that or something. But mysteriously, William Farrington does not want to talk about how he got there on that day and captured those photos. In fact, he wants absolutely no credit. It's virtually impossible to find anything about William Farrington on the internet. You should try. You should try, because apparently he's got multiple names. Maybe it's Roger Farrington. I can find him. He's also, there's like one photo of him at an Israel Day parade. I'm not kidding. I can't make this stuff up. In New York, somebody caught him like taking a photo. But this guy's got a long career. He's working for the New York Post. He captures this photo and doesn't want to talk about that anymore. Okay, William Farrington, whatever. Now, later that day of his alleged suicide, William Barr, who was the Attorney General at the time, United States Attorney General, is the one that comes out and gives a statement. Now, I should be clear, he's the Attorney General under President Donald Trump. This is 2019. So the Trump administration is in power. William Barr is the Attorney General. And I would say him giving a statement on Jeffrey Epstein, knowing what we know now about his dad, Donald Barr, the guy who literally wrote the book on Jeffrey Epstein. Remember? Space Relations. Yeah, by Donald Barr, the story about a country of Khazars that has so much power, stupid power, and they're running human trafficking, sex trafficking. And then Donald Barr, who happens to be a teacher, writing these weird fantasies about children and sex trafficking rings of the Dalton School. He's running the Dalton School, and then he just plucks Epstein up out of obscurity. Yeah, Donnie Barr, Daddy Donnie Barr. William Barr is the one that gives the statement. He says that day of the suicide, "I was appalled to learn that Jeffrey Epstein was found dead early this morning from an apparent suicide while in federal custody. Mr. Epstein's death raises serious questions that must be answered. In addition to the FBI's investigation, I have consulted with the Inspector General, who is opening an investigation into the circumstances of Mr. Epstein's death." Anyways, I'll tell you how that ends. Donnie Barr, he comes out and he says, yeah, this was actually just a case of just a lot of things went wrong on that day, and that's why he's dead. And there's no funny business. There is no funny business. People just all did the wrong thing on that day. And some other people had some incredible luck on that day, like our photojournalist and Aaron. And like, yeah, that's it. Case closed. Yeah, so you might understand why it is, especially given the way that the Trump administration is reacting right now and the utterly ridiculous excuses that we are getting about why they are shutting everything down and gaslighting us. You might understand why the public is not biting and is beginning to go back and look at the story and say, where is Jeffrey Epstein? Is he alive? Is he dead? Was he murdered? Did he actually commit suicide? Do I really trust Donnie Barr's son to tell me that he did commit suicide? And there is panic. There is panic coming out of the Trump administration right now. They don't know what direction to run in. First, they tried over the weekend Operation Blame Pam Bondi. They were just going to go ahead and make her the fall guy. And I'll tell you what they did here. As soon as I saw it, I was like, this is ridiculous. You're going to tell me everybody is going to now turn on Pam Bondi and pretend that this is just her fault? Not that we're looking at the deep state telling her exactly what she's going to say. She looks uncomfortable when she's saying it. Everybody is like, we're going to supposed to make her the fall guy. They wanted to test that out because the public is not letting this go. So they let out some perfectly, carefully orchestrated leaks, to test the water here, to make sure it's okay. Of like, what if we got rid of Pam Bondi? Would that make the public quiet? Would that calm down the MAGA base? They were shocked. Wow, oh my God, Trump is the king of MAGA. Why are people outraged? Trump can't even settle them down. What are we going to do? We're going to make them think that we deal with it if we just fire Pam Bondi. Laura Loomer is the one that gets the scoop on this, right? So Laura Loomer tweets out, you can pull this up. She said, scoop, FBI Director Kash and Dan Bongino are livid with Pam Bondi over her DOJ memo and the lack of transparency from her office regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. Source tells me Dan Bongino is taking the day off from his job as deputy director of the FBI, and there's now speculation on whether or not he will return to his job at the FBI over his disgust with Blondi's lack of transparency and handling of the Epstein files. Pam Bondi has brought total embarrassment to President Trump, J.D. Vance, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel. She's also lied to the American people. I'm told Kash and Bongino are furious with Bondi and the whole blowback has caused the blowback that she has caused them with her lack of transparency. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino should call for Blondie's public resignation today to save themselves and to also push for full transparency into the Epstein files. This is an issue the American people care deeply about. So she gets a scoop on this, and then Megyn Kelly gets a scoop on this. The Daily Wire gets a scoop on this. And it's interesting that this scoop is coming out from decisively pro-Israel people and publications. So what does that tell you? That somebody on the inside is testing the waters to see if they can get people to calm down if they agree to get rid of Pam Bondi, okay? And people are seeing through this. People are understanding that that is obviously ridiculous. The idea that you're going to fire Pam Bondi and everyone's going to just chill out and be fine with this. No, we understand that we are looking at a cover-up. What happens next is even stranger. Trump gets onto Truth Social. And I want to make this clear to you. This is the first time that Donald Trump actually gets ratioed on Truth Social, his platform, by his post. So he posts something that outrages his base so much that even on his platform, he cannot control the negative reaction to it. This is what he wrote regarding Pam Bondi and Jeffrey Epstein. It is strange, and not good strange. He wrote, "What's going on with my boys, and in some cases, gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people," again, this is in quotations, "are trying to hurt it, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein." I agree. Maybe he never dies. For years, it's Epstein over and over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration who conned the world with Russia hoax? 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, and more. They created the Epstein files, just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me, and now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't even given up on the JFK or the Martin Luther King Jr. files, no matter how much success we have had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, a safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons. It's never enough for some people. We are about to achieve more in 6 months than any other administration has achieved in over 100 years, and we have so much more to do. We are saving our country and making America great again, which will continue to be our complete priority. The left is imploding. Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, and arresting thugs and criminals, instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she is looking into as AG, and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the quote-unquote hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that, to me, lot going on there. The first thing I will say is it doesn't even sound like Trump. I don't even know what that is. It's rambling. It's all over the place. The other thing is that it sounds like if you put into a chat GPT prompt, like sound like Donald Trump tweeting something about Jeffrey Epstein didn't do it, that's what it would like. It would spit that back out at you. It feels automated. It feels like artificial intelligence, like trying to pretend to be Trump and saying so much that you're hoping to just confuse people by conflation, like trying to say that the Epstein thing is like Russiagate, which was ridiculous. Month after month, for years, they said that Russia colluded with Trump. They made up stuff, the dossier thing. Yeah, all of that was terrible. And the base was on your side because it was all proven with a lot of time to be false. So yeah, we were upset about that. Jeffrey Epstein is literally guilty of sex trafficking. Jeffrey Epstein was literally found guilty of the things that he was doing to children. One of these things is not like the other, okay? Not one of these things is definitively not like the other. The Hunter Biden laptop. Oh, yes, he is right. Do you know who was like, yes, when the photos came out and despite overwhelming evidence, the mainstream media said there was nothing to see with the Hunter Biden laptop, and now they're admitting it. But do you know who did all of those things, Trump? The deep state did that. The state protected Biden. They protected the Biden family, and they used the media to do that. It is the exact same vein, actually, of what's happening right now, where the state is rising to protect Jeffrey Epstein, to protect his contacts, to protect his network. We know that he had cameras installed when he had all of these individuals, these powerful individuals and these powerful politicians partying with him. We know that, okay? Jeffrey Epstein was given the deal of a lifetime back in 2007 by Alan Dershowitz, no less. Alan Dershowitz, who you decided to work with on clemency, okay? Donald Barr, who you decided to have be the attorney general, that came out and said nothing to see here, Jeffrey Epstein. You see, we're not saying that you're guilty, but you are right now guilty of gaslighting the public. We're not saying that you are in the files. And again, I would like to stress, I certainly don't believe that, but it is very clear that you are not calling the shots on the Jeffrey Epstein debacle, and you're essentially being used to try to control the public reaction to those files not being released. Who is on camera, if anyone, with children? And I think that, yeah, I don't think that all of those boxes, as you guys are now saying, was just him downloading, as Pam Bondi said, terrible images of children that he wanted to download in all of these boxes. I don't believe that. I don't buy that, okay? And again, what is happening now is it seems like you think your base is stupid. That's how I feel. I feel like Trump thinks his base is stupid, or again, because I don't think he's pressing send on these messages, the people around him certainly think that Trump is stupid. And that shouldn't surprise you, given the fact that all of these people were never Trump. They were never Trump. Trump is surrounded by people who hate him and have infiltrated his base. And they think, as they thought that Trump was too stupid to be president, that his base is too stupid to see through the lies that they are telling right now. And so what are they going to do? What is the last thing they're going to do now with the Epstein stuff while we're still reacting to it? Oh, Operation Just Give Them More War. Yeah, war as a distraction. Never mind. We can't talk about Epstein because, guys, guess what? Look at this headline. Trump announces an aggressive, or Trump is to announce an aggressive Ukraine weapons plan. Yeah, he already indicated that in that same press conference, that there's just going to be more weapons sent to Ukraine. They're going to attack Russia. We're just going to have a world war and another reset, I guess. So you guys just stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And I am telling you that I will be the very last person that will stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. I will do his entire genealogy backwards and forwards, including everybody around him, their genealogy, before we let go of this. Because when it comes to children, I'm telling you guys, the left and the right, we have definitely got to come together on this and not let it go. So that's what I'm going to say about that topic. Also going to tell you what Tucker, who I am very concerned about, what's going on with him. All right, you guys, Tucker Carlson. Tell you something about him. He is the man of the hour, potentially the man of the last couple of years. His exit from Fox News, legendary. You know, he's not going to stop talking about what's going on in Ukraine, the Ukraine corruption. They kick him out. They're like, no, you cannot stand up to the military-industrial complex. I wouldn't even say he rebuilt. It was like he never left. And yeah, when you talk about the military-industrial complex, inevitably you're going to land back. You're going to be discussing Israel. That's just how it works. And he's been discussing Israel from a military-industrial complex perspective, but also he is speaking about Jeffrey Epstein. And now Israel is rising up against Tucker. They already were, in case you missed it, but they are raising alarms. So first and foremost, I'll tell you what he said. I'll show you what he said. He was speaking at Turning Point USA, their annual conference that takes place in Tampa, Florida. And here is what he said. And the crowd, which means young students coming up, loved it. Take a listen.
And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen.
Okay, a lot I could say here. First and foremost, just Tucker is on that stage. I don't see myself there. And yet you are going to see that in this response to this, my name gets drafted again. It is very clear by now that Tucker and I are on Israel's list. We saw that with Operation Mocking Pastor. Every pastor just suddenly getting inspired to go after Candace and Tucker as if we work together. We don't work together. I haven't done a show in years. But they are finding that we are too effective in waking up people to the Israel question. And we've got a lot of questions about Israel. So Tucker gives that speech. Tucker is trending. Candace gets drafted into it. Now, Charlie Kirk runs Turning Point USA. I used to work with Turning Point USA. Amichai Chikli, okay, that's his name. He is the minister of truth, as I'm calling it, the propaganda arm of Israel, decides to write an open letter to Charlie Kirk about this. I'm not going to read this whole letter, but I'm going to show you it. This is on Twitter. He released it. Incredibly, even though he's going to mention me in this, he blocks me. So I can't respond because he's about to tell a lie. As you should realize by now that in order to support Israel, you have to be really comfortable lying through your teeth. You feel nothing when you lie. He even puts me in quotations. So he's alleging, this is a direct quote that I wrote. He starts by saying, Charlie, like many others, I've been following your remarkable journey from afar. I watched Tucker Carlson's speech at your conference, your debate with Megyn Kelly, and I must admit I was filled with sorrow. I don't know whether Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset for any agency. Well, you should because you're clearly one. I would certainly like to know. In particular, I would like to understand his connection to the kind of people who sought to sell out the land of Israel to the Palestinians. People like the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, blah, blah, blah. He goes on, yet the message conveyed at your conference with Tucker Carlson as keynote speaker just days after his sycophantic interview with the Iranian terror regime was unmistakable. Israel was behind Epstein. The audience applauded. Everyone seemed pleased, especially the Qataris and their jihadist terror channel, Al Jazeera. By the way, it would be fascinating to uncover the depth and the nature of their connection to influencers such as Tucker Carlson and others. Okay, here we go. Just going to do the Qatari smear right away. Always good to do that. Jumping right into that. Then he says, we see Candace Owens publicly claim that, quote, the Israelis knew in advance about 9/11 and didn't warn the U.S. And, quote, Israelis killed JFK. That, quote, Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians, even worse than Hitler's. And that, literally Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians worse than Hitler's. These are not direct quotes. And that, quote, Mengele never performed horrific experiments in Auschwitz. He just puts in quotation marks. He has to block me because he's making it up. Nobody has ever heard me say Mengele never performed horrific experiments in Auschwitz. No one's ever heard me say the Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians. But he's doing this because he's got to appeal to the public and make it seem like, of course, they constantly have to go after the emotionality surrounding the Holocaust. Oh, these people are beyond reproach. Candace is up there saying all these things. And also she might be funded by Qatar. He's lying. And again, why am I even being brought into this? I was not at this conference. I did not speak on stage with Tucker. Again, Operation Candace and Tucker, you're starting to see this. But it gets even scarier because they're losing the propaganda war. They know they're losing the propaganda war. And Amichai knows this because he actually mentioned me and Tucker in the same sentence a while ago when he was speaking to the Jerusalem Post and said that they wanted to start controlling the conversation on social media to combat, quote unquote, anti-Semitism. That's his job, to combat anti-Semitism, which is code for to censor the speech of Americans, right? His job is to censor the speech of Americans because Americans are waking up to the fact that Israel is problematic. It just is, right? But what gets scary is that because they're losing this war, they're getting desperate. And the former prime minister of Israel has now tweeted against Tucker Carlson, okay, which means they are sounding the alarms. Again, panic. We can't control the American mindset anymore. America is the military might, and we need to stop the influence of people like Tucker Carlson. I'm Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister. If I write this tweet, I can probably get people to shut up. Now I'm coming down to speak about Tucker Carlson. Former prime minister. This is crazy, right? Of a foreign country. He writes this on Twitter, on X. He writes, as a former Israeli prime minister, with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal and the merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with the Mossad or the state of Israel. Epstein never worked for the Mossad. The accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, pretending that they know things that they don't. They just make things up and they say it with confidence, and these lies stick because it's Israel. There's a vicious wave of slander and lies against my country and my people, and we just won't take it anymore. Oh, first off, what do you mean you just won't take it anymore? That's a laced threat coming from Israel, because when you guys want things to happen, you make them happen. You get very lucky, you know? You want war with Afghanistan, the Middle East, and the towers go down, you know? You want AIPAC not to register as a foreign for FARA, and suddenly a president gets shot in a moving vehicle in Dallas. I don't like your luck, is what I'll say about you, Israel. So when you say we're not going to take it anymore, and you're prime minister going after a journalist in America, it's not landing the way you think it's landing. Tucker responds, he says this, he says, you, quote, just won't take it anymore? Instead of issuing threats on social media, why don't you sit down for a rational interview on Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the Israeli government? We'll reach out to your office this morning. Now, I'm going to guess that now he's not going to take the bait on that, because, again, one of the things that you realize is that in order to support Israel, you have to be really comfortable lying all the time, like all the time. And Naftali Bennett, in case that name does not sound familiar to you, well, before he became prime minister, he was caught, or willfully speaking, he wasn't exactly caught, discussing how he was putting together a cell of people. I'm not kidding. This guy that you just saw tweeting that at Tucker, putting together a cell of people in Israel to edit Wikipedia so that they could control the information that people were reading on Wikipedia to make sure that it had a slight bend towards supporting Israel's, as a state, the Zionist cause. This is Naftali. The former prime minister, before he became prime minister, on the news in Israel discussing how they were infiltrating Wikipedia. Take a listen.
Moetzet Yesha, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged instruction day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
They want the nature of Wikipedia to be Zionist. Yeah, so they were just training us up right at the beginning of this. They understood and have always understood that it's an information war. That's the reason that they have their journalists writing furiously about Tucker. The information war is the reason why they've got these pastors out talking about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Candace Owens, right? Candace Owens. That's why they've got these influencers on TikTok. What happened to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens? They are decades ahead of us in terms of controlling the information that's on the web. Okay, that is the reason why some of these organizations, entire news organizations like the New York Post, just have a pro-Israel slant. They just can't write anything bad about Israel. They just can't do it. Israel could blow up children in broad daylight as they're doing, and they can't tell you about that. Bibi Netanyahu could literally be facing trials regarding his administration's connections to Qatar, and those people will not cover it, but they will try to smear Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens as connected to Qatar. When I've said 1,000 times on record, I've never taken a single dollar from Qatar. I've never even taken a meeting to that effect. Forget even taking money. I've never even spoken to a Qatari official. Not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. But I'm not doing that. They lie. And they're allowed to lie, and they're allowed to edit, and they're allowed to put quotation marks where you haven't. They smear and they libel for a living. And you don't have to do that if you're telling the truth, okay? You don't have to smear and libel and make up fake quotations and block people so that you can put out those quotations because you're telling the truth. So I'm going to say, Tucker Carlson, you probably, look, people say the same thing about me, but I would be highly concerned if Naftali Bennett, who essentially put together an information cell on Wikipedia, is coming out and trying to say to the world that what you are saying is false. And that's actually probably the most evidence to date that what you are saying is definitely true. And they're spiraling because they're losing information war. And Epstein is at the crux of it all, which is why we are not going to let that story go. All right, guys, I want to get some of your comments first. All right, guys, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Oh, we got 63,000 of you guys watching live. While you're here, please subscribe to this channel while we're still here. We have Irma de Santiago. She writes, I never believed Epstein died. Didn't Attorney General Barr visit him before he committed suicide? I am here for you to tackle this issue and Iran-Contra if you so desire. Yeah, I so desire. And I did not know. Could you fact check that if you guys quickly in the control room? Did Attorney General Barr visit him before he committed suicide? That would be just unbelievably wild. I can't accept that, Irma. I cannot accept that. Michelle Miller writes, anytime I'm overwhelmed by all of this, I just think I'm so proud to be a part of the little people. I love my humble life. I'm a good person. And I have faith that all of this evil will come to light. Oh, have faith because it's coming to light right now. Naftali Bennett is not out there talking about Tucker Carlson, a journalist in America, because, evil is in the dark. If evil's in the dark, they're not saying anything. Everybody's talking about it, right? They cannot control this, no matter how many journalists, no matter how many pastors. They cannot get the public, no matter sending out President Trump. They cannot control the response. They cannot control the demand. They cannot slow down the awakening that is taking place. Tanya writes, I don't like being the conspiracy theorist, but either he was killed or he is still alive. Epstein has become an idea, and we have to be united for this. I totally agree with you. And here's what I'll say. New York especially, like I just could totally see a tunnel system getting him out somehow. I don't know what happened, but I do know that I don't accept the narrative that has been presented to us. So I'm leaving everything open because the response that we are getting from the state, the lies and the gaslighting signals the fact that they are hiding something big. That's what I would say. Tanya writes, AP writes, Trump isn't in the files, but he's protecting a person or people in his orbit that are. He fell out with Epstein back in 2004, banned him from Mar-a-Lago in 2007 for making passes at a 17-year-old. He is not in them. I tend to agree with you. I personally do not think that Trump is implicated in the files in a sexual way, is what I will say. I do think that he could be protecting people in his orbit, or he is terrified for his life because Israel is running the government with blackmail. And yeah, it's got to be one of these options. Blue Jeans writes, you are the voice for the people, Candace. Stay safe and never let them silence you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your guys and all of your support. BCO writes, poll dead or alive. Let's not forget Bondi is funding Qatar through her company. That's treason. They're protecting family names and other countries. Seems our government forgot about the Articles of Confederation and the Sherman Act. You are totally correct about that. And yeah, Pam Bondi is registered under FARA. So yeah, take that for what you will. It is quite ironic that they accuse everyone else of being funded by Qatar and kind of leave out the connections that people like Bibi Netanyahu and Pam Bondi and Israel, the state, which does tons of business with Qatar, real estate business, diamond business, like pretending that Qatar is like off limits. It requires American ignorance. Like you have to not know all that Israel does and all the work that they do with Qatar to think that somehow if an American journalist was being funded by Qatar, that it would represent a conflict of interest, because it certainly wouldn't if it doesn't represent a conflict of interest for people in Israel to work with them. D writes, everyone's talking about Mossad and Israel, but no one ever talks about the king. I don't think the Brits ever forgot about the runaways. They would love to see our downfall too. And I think there are some connections in general to Israel and a lot of countries. I think probably a blackmail ring is not just going to be something that they execute in America. If You want to have power, you're a tiny country. There's no reason why you should be having so much military success in that region why are people compelled to support Israel? Because they're literally compelled, right? They're compelled because of blackmail. It's ridiculous, the amount of funding that they get. We turn the other cheek when they commit crimes. USS Liberty, the fact that those guys are still alive and saying what happened to them on that day and they're being gaslit and called anti-Semitic, they survived. If you haven't watched my USS Liberty episode, it's an absolute must watch. Total tearjerker, but an absolute must watch to really understand what Israel has gotten away with since LBJ became president. Anyways, the Canaanite writes, today there's a protest in the last fully Christian city in Palestine, the city of Tebeh. Yeah, we've talked about this, and I shared this on my X. The heads of all the major churches are all protesting today because they have been kicked out of their homes since October 7th. Yeah, they're taking more land. This is what Israel does. They just take land. They send their radical settlers there. They burn the agriculture. They kill animals to make sure they make things unlivable. And then they just take the land. They don't pay for it, nothing. They just go, this land's ours because we say it is, and we are chosen. Chosen for what and by who would be my question. Okay? Demons do this, not good people. Just to be clear, in case it was not clear where I stood on this issue. Just a producer's note, they wrote that Barr did not visit Epstein. So that is not true. The New York Post reported on it that he did, and then they retracted the story. That's weird. New York Post especially. Do you want to pull that up? You said you had the Newsweek article. The visit did not happen. The claim comes from a now partially retracted New York Post story in which a mob informant, Louis Cosman, suggested that Barr had visited Epstein's jail about the time that Epstein was found in his cell with bruises around his neck. Cosman said, the Attorney General never visits jails. Something's not right there. Wow. That's interesting. Okay. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to say about that. We'll just read it to you as it is. Yeah, the story was repeated by other news sources with headlines more explicitly concluding that what the Post had reported. However, as later noted by the Post, there was no evidence to support Cosman's point. So essentially, this is just disputed. They can't say it didn't happen, just say it's disputed. That's it. The New York Post has removed the reference to Barr, and I guess now they're ignoring the mob informant, Louis Cosman. Very interesting. Why would this guy say that? Did he think that he would get away with lying about the Attorney General? Who knows? Anyways, we fact-checked that for you live so that you could see. All right, guys, that is all that we have for today. If you'd like to support my journalism, independent journalism, please head over to CandaceOwens.com. While you're there, you can pre-order my book. You can buy a T-shirt. You can buy a hat. You can subscribe and you watch A Shot in the Dark, which is fantastic content for parents to be and people that are parents currently to learn about the entire childhood vaccine schedule because Big Pharma is poisonous and lying to us about history. That seems to be a running theme on the show. We are being lied to about history. It seems like, yeah, if they're like it's all just one big show. That is what I will say over and over again. Anyways, you guys, we'll see you tomorrow.